think because we're online, I have to use the microphone. So even though you're here right in front of me, I have to use this. Okay. So if you speak, you also need to speak here. Okay. So today's conversation is about the presidential elections, of course. Okay. So a couple of questions. One is, what do you think about the outcome? Who were you rooting for and why? Now, question two, I already know the answer for Lanfranco because I saw him today, and this is his shoes that he was wearing, and then he changed them. So, Lanfranco, you get to be the first one. How do you feel about the elections?
I'm happy. Yeah. I'm satisfied. No? Uh, and it was the natural outcome because the last 4 years there were three big problems unresolved by the by the inflation. I think that I spoke with Americans this summer. The price grew up 100% in 4 years, and not so much the wages. The wages only 50%, for example. No, then yeah. Okay. Then the flood of illegal immigrants, the flood of illegal immigrants with crime problems. And
the dog eating, people eating dogs, right?
And the third, most important for us, the never-ending wars.
Okay, wars.
Because it is not the issue of Ukraine. In the last 10 years, we had 1 year per year. It is too much.
Okay, thank you. So you're happy about the outcome, Trump. How do you feel?
I was not a fan of Trump.
Okay.
But I thought he had more chance to win because all these
these problems, these issues,
these issues, and his campaign was against these issues. He wanted to solve this problem.
He wants to solve these problems. Okay, and if you could have voted, would you have voted for Trump or Kamala?
For Kamala.
Kamala. Okay,
yes.
So I'm going to put one vote for Kamala, one for Trump. We're even, Stephen, right now. Okay, thank you. How do you feel about the outcome?
Not very happy.
Okay, speak into the microphone so they can hear you at home. Yeah.
I'm not very happy.
You're not happy?
No, because I think Trump is not able to solve the problems with the wars because he didn't explain how he will solve this problem.
Mm-hmm.
He gives green light to Putin with Ukraine. Then he solved the problem with the war.
Okay.
It's finished in 2 weeks. It's finished. But and then he won't. I think I heard he will to put Dazi.
Oh, that would be tariffs.
Tariffs.
Tariffs. So give you the word for that. Tariffs are taxes on imports,
yes,
right?
Against European products.
Okay.
And,
also,
it's
yeah.
Not, very good for our economy.
Thank you. So, would you have voted for Kamala or for Trump or for Kamala? How do you feel about the outcome?
I actually expect about the victory of Trump. So I know that American people, they generally don't vote for female presidents because they are a little bit chauvinist. How do you call it?
They're chauvinist, they're misogynist, they're sexist. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
What about you? What would you have voted for? Would you have voted for who would you have voted for, Trump or Kamala?
um, I would say Trump because that wouldn't be the first time as a president. I think that for the second
Term?
time, yes, would have more experience as a president.
Okay.
So, and I also remember that he appeared in a movie Home Alone in a short scene.
Hmm.
Yeah, in
Yeah, he was
the second movie.
he made a cameo appearance in one of the films. I don't know what
Yeah,
his
he
role
was
was,
the
but
concierge or the doorman. It
Oh.
was just an extra. So,
sure.
yeah.
He loves those, right? Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Did everyone get these two documents? I put them in the chat. If anybody's watching from there, I'm just going to give them to anyone who doesn't have them. You have them? Perfect. Okay. We're not finished though. Tell me what do you think of the outcome?
So I'm disappointed.
Okay, talk into the
So sorry.
microphone.
I'm quite disappointed.
You're disappointed.
Yes, I quite expected it because I don't know, because I don't have so much trust in the general American people, the province, and it's quite amazing that the people who voted for Trump are people that are not, how will I say, they are not quite poor people, but Trump is represented at quite a high level of richness, of power, and is sexist. I think it's a very bad person because what he did, we know, we see, we have seen.
He's been convicted of.
Yes, it's so I think, but people like I think about Trump is similar to Berlusconi.
Don't you think he's worse?
Yes, it's worse, but
You think he's worse too?
Yes, but Berlusconi was condemned. Is rich, is
They have similarities.
yeah, similar that the approach, and I voted for Kamala, of course.
You vote for Kamala.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to put your vote up for Kamala. But it's not Kamala, it's Kamala. I have to be better about my pronunciation. Kamala. Okay. Do we get everybody? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do I get to be the tiebreaker? Okay, so Trump is less represented here. Of course, I'm going to add my here because I cannot hide. You know, we've talked about this before, but I think that the important thing for me is not, I mean, of course I was disappointed. It's normal, right? Because I'm a lifelong Democrat. My mom was a Democrat. My grandmother was a Democrat. My great grandmother was a Democrat. So, of course, you know, the only way I would actually vote for a Republican would be if Donald Trump ran as a Democrat, which he's done before, by the way. He's changed many times. So I realize that I also, as a character, as a person, he's not my cup of tea. However, I am interested in people with different opinions. I'm not angry with Americans. I'm not angry with people who like Trump at all. I'm interested because I think we need to talk about some of these things. So whereas Trump, for me, has a certain significance, he means something that I find really negative, I find that people who really like him see him in a completely different way. They focus on a different part of him. They might focus on his charisma or his sense of humor. He's funny. They may see him as a peaceful president. Some people are saying that. Even Simone before said he's the peaceful president. And I've heard that many times, people saying that. So now I'm just interested in hearing what people have to say. So this for me is actually a sign of hope in the last few days that I've been talking to people and getting their opinions, even people with different opinions than mine, because we have to. In America, the average American family has a division. Okay. And even if you say, oh, the whole family is for Trump, it's not true. There's always somebody in the family who's going to be a Democrat, who's probably the black sheep of the family. Or in my family, everybody on one side is Democratic, the other side, the uncle and his family, they're all Republican. So yeah, during the pandemic, we got mad at each other and didn't talk for a while. But in the end, they're still your family. You still want the same things in life usually. So we have to find a way to actually talk again about some of these issues. So I think this is a great opportunity for us too to kind of look at what's going on here. Why has this disappeared? Uh-oh. There we are. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of take you through a little bit. First of all, just look at the map. I'm sure you saw this image before. It will change in the coming days, probably. I think that the polls that you heard about before the election had things much closer, right? People thought, okay, it's going to be a really close race. And there was some trepidation, some nervousness that said, what will happen? How much will the candidate win by? Will it be, there were different choices. Will it be a small margin that we'll have to think about it and maybe have to recount, and there will be lawsuits and it will be complicated, maybe violence? Or is it going to be one candidate or the other will win by a landslide? That's another option. So in the end, it wasn't very close, was it? Trump won by quite a few, right? He had up till what's counted, because obviously these are the two states that are leaning towards Trump, but have not been called yet because they're still counting the votes. So 72 million compared to 67 million, okay, so far. Okay, we don't know what that's going to look like. But do you know how many people voted for Biden? Shall we check? Let's Google it. Biden versus Trump. Let's do popular vote. We have to do popular vote because otherwise, yeah. The popular vote, Joe Biden had 81 million votes. Donald Trump had 74. Okay, so 81, 74. He's got a little less than he did that time, right? So just less in general, right? So Biden had more. What does that mean? More people turned out. It was a really complicated time. It was post-COVID. It was, people were very dissatisfied. And what does this tell us? Does this tell us that Trump or Biden is better than the other? No, it's more of a reflection of how many people are feeling the need to vote, right? Even though we have a pretty big difference here, but we maybe don't have that same sort of got to get out there and vote as last time, although it's also timing, right? If this had been right after the Dodd's appeal, maybe more women would have voted because they remember that, okay, because that took away the right to choose for American women at the federal level. I don't know. But anyway, it's just sort of interesting to see how usually with every election, the number of total voters actually goes up. This time we don't know yet because it's not finished. Okay. But at this point, we've got Trump at 295 electoral votes and Harris at 226. Trump needed 270 to win. Okay. And he will probably get about 310, 314. That's what they're saying now. and Harris is at 226. So I don't think that we were sure what was going to happen at all. This was the first election where nobody wanted to say anything. Question. Let me give you the other. I'll let you guys hold on to this other one. So if you want to pass it around.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So we have to admit that Trump, some months ago, he basically had an attack. So maybe some people to settle him, to like relieve him, decided to vote in favor of Trump.
You're saying because of the
guess,
assassination attempts on him?
Yeah.
Oh, you think that maybe convinced some voters to vote for him?
Yeah.
Maybe.
But just some voters, not
some.
everybody.
Not everybody.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that's all. Thanks.
I think I'll leave this. Where can I leave this where you guys can reach for it if you want? I'll hand it to you if you want to. Okay. So the blue states, of course, are the Harris states, and the Trump ones are the blue ones. Okay. Some of them we expected, some of them we didn't know. What I thought was interesting on November 5th at 4 p.m., when they were still counting votes, this comes out from Donald J. Trump. This is on Truth Social, which is his sort of Twitter. A lot of talk about massive cheating in Philadelphia, law enforcement coming. Why do you think he wrote that? Do you want to? Oh, of course, we want to include everyone. The mic.
The cheating is in the American election are not a new thing. I was a child and in my home watching TV, and my dad knew a lot about America, and it was the problem that JFK cheated. 1960.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, good. Because in Chicago, because the Chicago there was the Democratic mob in Chicago, the Mayor Daley, all the
Mayor Daley,
Mayor Daley, because at the end of the in the evening, JFK was losing. No, in the morning he won. The people said the dad of JFK called to the Daley in Chicago and say, "You have to do something."
Okay, so your dad told you
No,
that JFK was elected as president because Chicago, a Chicago mayor made that happen?
The democratic machine worked in the night. Worked in the night in Chicago. Democratic machine, the bureaucracy.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. And then Ike told Nixon, "You have to sue, no?
To sue them, okay.
And Nixon, he was not, he has a tradition of to be not so particularly honest, but in that situation, people said that he answered, no, if I south, no, if I south, no, querelo, faccio denuncia. If I sue, maybe I can win, but America should lose. We lose, and now we are fighting with the communists.
Okay,
then
we'll have to Google this story.
But this is, maybe there is the rumors. Mm-hmm. It is difficult to know if it was true or not. Mm-hmm. Then again, with W. Bush, the same miss in Florida.
Okay, that was
then again with Bush. Where is the problem? The problem in America is that in many places you can vote without identification.
Okay, this is also a Republican talking point.
And if if had won Trump with a little margin, there have been anyway a mess because the Democrat didn't have accept it. And the opposite too. You need a clear system of votation. You have the system of votation inherited by Britain. In Britain, till 2 years ago, they voted for all their history without identification, like in America, like in many
Okay,
parts
but
of America.
be careful,
Now
Gianfranco, because this is not true. It's not true that all in America you don't use an ID. Be
in
careful.
some parts of America.
Okay, but
In
that's
some
different.
parts of America.
Some parts, and there are different ways of proving your identity. Be
For
careful.
example, but
Your birth certificate is a form of ID, for example.
but
You're saying what you're talking about is, and this is part of. There's a long story of voter suppression in America as well, so we need to talk about that too. So you're talking about something that's true, but you're kind of taking it out of context. We got to be careful when we do these things. Okay, we can talk about the history of like voting rights and how it's protected, how it's been suppressed, how it gets expressed, what the Republicans say about what the Democrats say about it. But be careful. I know what you're saying, and this is where this is coming from.
In New York,
Donald Trump is happy to say that people are cheating if he's not sure he's winning. When he started to win, this disappeared.
But in opposite situation, the Democrat would have complained it anyway.
It's not
with
true.
Little differences.
Be careful. Kamala, what did Kamala do?
No, it is
She respected the process. Same with Biden.
This is a landslide. It's not possible. Within the margins, with a thin margin, no? This is the problem.
Okay. All right. But I understand what you're saying. But this is true. Let's also be clear that with Donald Trump, was it so close? It wasn't. Okay. So anyway, this came up on the 5th. This is when they were counting the votes. And there's some speculation. I'm going to be trying to fair that Trump was also never going to accept if he lost. He didn't accept it last time, that he probably wouldn't accept it this time. And this came up. Cheating in Philadelphia. Why is Philadelphia important? Where is Philadelphia? It's in Pennsylvania, which is also called a swing state, a battleground. It's just one of the requirements for being a state. But in the end, the next day in the Washington Post, we have this. Trump's triumph. What's strange about this headline? There shouldn't be. Well, if it's singular, maybe. But without an apostrophe, it's still correct, but it means something different. Huh? It's plural, right? It's not possessive. But are we talking about just both? Right.
The triumph of the family of Trump.
The triumph of the family of Trump, okay? Now, I point this out because we can talk about the different newspapers, obviously. Washington Post, to be fair, and this is something that I want to point out to everyone, even though it's really, Italians never believe me. You can decide if you believe me or if you don't. But the major newspapers in America, for example, the Washington Post, which I refer to a lot, and the New York Times, okay, are in their philosophy is to be in the middle, okay? What they say, and what this is kind of how American journalism has been, obviously now we do have newspapers that are definitely right-leaning, and they normally say it, right? But the New York Times, the LA Times, the Boston Globe, these, sort of larger newspapers are supposed to be in the middle, also NPR. But what they say is journalists always have an opinion. So even if I'm trying to write about something and try to stay neutral, my bias, my preferences will probably come out, right? And so that's what they say is like, well, so it's important to know who the journalist is. The New York Times and the Washington Post, those are two of the newspapers I read the most because they have both very right-wing writers and left-wing writers, so Republicans and Democrats who both write for the newspapers. And normally when there's an important story, there are at least 3 writers, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, okay? So even when a newspaper endorses a candidate, okay, because the major newspapers, the tradition was that you would have an editorial board. They would have a panel of people who get together on both sides, take the information that they have and endorse or support a candidate. Okay. The New York Times this year supported. No, the New York Times supported Kamala. Who did the Washington Post support?
It goes anywhere, anyone.
Say it again into the microphone. Say it into the microphone. It's in front of you.
Yes, the Washington Post didn't endorse anyone because Bezos,
Jeff Bezos is the owner
of the Post, understood that maybe Trump could win. Maybe he had right polls, and anyway understood the mood of the nation, and he thought it is better to remain neutral. But the journalist got angry.
Okay, so put it down now. Okay, so it's true. Jeff Bezos had a meeting with Trump just before they were going to announce their endorsement. Okay, now to be fair, Jeff Bezos was a lifelong Democrat as well. But that doesn't mean the newspaper is Democratic. There are many people that will say that mainstream newspaper is always Democratic. It's not really true, but there are many people who believe that. And maybe there are more journalists who are more Democratic. Who knows? But Jeff Bezos, we don't know where he is on his politics now. We do know that he is a very wealthy man and that he's in technology. And we know that he had a meeting with Trump. And we know that if Trump were to become president, it would be beneficial for people like him, okay, for several reasons. One is because of deregulation in technology, which is another reason why Elon Musk, went in that direction as well, even though he also had other opinions about Trump in the past. So we don't know exactly what happened in that meeting, but Bezos wrote a letter to the Post, a letter to the editor saying that they were going to, just to be fair, just to not take sides. And it's true. Journalists got angry, but first the subscribers got angry. They lost 250,000 subscribers in one day. And then, of course, journalists left because they didn't think that, they didn't like how things were going. So, take breaking tradition. They had many different reasons for leaving. But so that happened. But in the end, I think it's interesting because when we talk about journalists having their bias come out, right? Even if the paper is in the middle, if you look at this, your eye just sees one thing. It says Trump triumph. You hear, it's got that nice alliteration to it. And in fact, that's what I saw. I thought, oh, okay, this is a pretty neutral. It's a neutral headline. But then I looked again and I saw the S. I didn't see that the first time. And then I saw, oh, well, who's in the photo? Now this is a cut off, because I did a screenshot, so it's not the entire photo. You'd see the rest of, well, who's in the photo here? We have, what's the wife's name? Melania. We have Trump. Who's back here? That's Barron Trump. That's his son. Okay. Now, the son is also now involved in the organization, right? He was I think Trump made him I don't know if it's, I don't want to be wrong, Lamfarca, you might know this. Was he the director of the Republican National Party now or something? Barron has some importance. The other brother, Don Jr., is much more, we hear about him more often. The wife. So the last time Trump was president, the people around him tended to be family and friends. He's big on loyalty. So I thought this was interesting, not as a judgment about Trump, but something to be said about the newspapers, because also Trump famously does not like newspapers. That's why he has his own, he felt that they didn't write enough good stuff about them, or about him. So he likes Fox News a lot because they're friendly to him. Truth Social, which is his network, which, his platform and now his network. And so there seems to be like these little rebellious things happening. Is it just, Trump, or is it the Trumps? What does that mean? Okay. Then I thought this was also interesting. This came out the first day. Trump wins. He becomes the second president to win non-consecutive terms, first felon. What's a felon? No, a felon is a person who's been. No, it's a person who has been a felon. Is someone who's a criminal in Italian. Is someone who's been actually accused of something and found guilty. Okay. Now, this is something that, in a felon, you have to be of a federal crime, by the way. It's not just a generic criminal. It's if you park your car and you get arrested because you don't pay the multa. It's not that. This would be something you do something at a higher level. Okay. So here's that again, that sort of journalist coming going, oh, two little scratches, right? One about not non-consecutive terms, but also the felon. Okay. It's a fine. Yeah, it's a fine. Yeah, a ticket or fine. Yeah, that's correct. So Donald Trump won the White House after a criminal conviction and 2 impeachments by riding a wave of voter dissatisfaction with the direction of the country under 4 years of Democratic leadership. Okay. So again, always usually 2 writers there. And then if we go down, I love this headline. Okay, same page. Trump vows to fix everything once in office. Harris to speak today. Okay, that was the day before. But I have to say, I feel a little bit guilty because really, Wisconsin, my state, was the state that made Trump win. So, of course, I feel like, oh, man, I didn't do enough. Okay, but I wanted to show you what it looks like anyway. Because Wisconsin is also a swing state, meaning to swing, go this way, go that way. We change depending on a million things, depending on the person who's running, depends on immigration. It depends on where people retire. Swing states change because the situation changes. Wisconsin right now is a swing state, but there were other swing states that became non-swing states. Florida used to be a swing state. Now it tends to go Republican. Okay. So the opposite of a swing state would be a red state or a blue state. Okay. So in my state, I thought this was interesting. Of course, the red part is most of the state. That's because most of the state is a rural state. Okay. And then the blue parts tend to be the cities or university towns, etc. Okay. My city is that little blue part right here. Okay. But what I thought was interesting is like poor Americans, what did they do? So Donald Trump won 49.7%. Okay. That's a clear win. Kamala, she got, the difference is 1,697,000. Here we have 1,668,000. But we've got 17,000 people who voted for Robert Kennedy, who wasn't even in the race. He quit. Well, he'll be in there. We know. He'll probably be the health guy for Trump. But he actually dropped out of the race. He wanted his name off the ballot because he was worried it would steal votes from Trump, who he endorsed immediately after. But the Wisconsin people didn't get the message, I guess. And then the other one is Jill Stein, who got 12,000 votes. Do you know who Jill Stein is? She's the Green Party, which in America has like very little sway. But I looked at her website. In fact, I put the link in your lesson if you want to learn more about Jill Stein. But she says, any vote I get, I'll be happy. But in this case, I don't think these 2 would have been enough to help Kamala anyway. But I just thought it was interesting that Wisconsin people, sometimes we just don't stay up with the news. I don't know. Or maybe that was part of the a little rebellion in itself. Yeah. Go ahead.
RFK Jr. wanted his name to be removed.
I know he sued, and
but the justice said in many states, the justice said, no, your name has to remain
because they had already printed the ballots. That's why they don't, and it was too expensive. It would have been like, I don't know how many millions of
Joyce, and then in Italy, nobody never spoke in mainstream media about RFK Jr. Nobody, never.
Nobody talked about. It was a Kennedy.
Jr.
They didn't have
the son of Bob Kennedy, RFK Jr.
They didn't even talk about the worm in his brain. Nothing. About the hunting.
Never.
He's a little bit crazy.
In my opinion,
yeah.
The endorsement of RFK Jr. and then Tulsi Gabbard, no? Tulsi, the Hawaiian one, Tulsi Gabbard.
Oh, okay.
But particularly the endorsement of RFJ Jr. Has been a game changer.
You think that got a lot of people to vote for Trump?
Because
maybe?
he did I listened. Very principled and clear addresses, a clear speech, saying first of two important things for America and for the world. First of all, the food, because all the world know that the food in America, there is too much chemistry. We know, no? It is sweet, it is good, but it's not healthy often, no? Because the big food industry is very powerful, and he stresses this problem. It is true because every Italian says, if you don't eat Italian in America, you don't digest well. No. Second, he said that it's mandatory for the war to remove the grip of the neocons to the politics of America. The neocons are the warmongers, the war organizers.
Like neoconservative, you're saying.
Neocons. It is basic for the world. It's not only Ukraine. It is a path 20 years old long.
Okay. Would you, if you had a third option, would you have voted for RFK or for Trump?
No. Anyway, for Trump, because it was impossible a victory of RFK Jr. would have been a wonderful Democratic candidate. Till 6 months ago, he was Democrat for all his life.
But his family is like they disassociate with him.
Now, of course, but he wanted to become. He defied Biden in the Democratic primary. He defied, and the Democratic Party chased it away with him because the machine was too strong. And so he was angry.
If he was, okay, he went for an independent. He didn't go as a Republican. He went as an independent in the end.
And then from independent to Democratic, no.
Yeah, I'm surprised that RFK actually got people to vote because his name is important, but he's a little bit crazy.
If you listen, his speech, he speaks well often, not about vaccines, not about.
Okay, he's anti-vax. He's also got a few crazy stories.
And another things, it's really principled.
He really is principled.
Principled.
Okay. All right. Then I just want to show you another page. This is from today, which I thought was an interesting photo. It says, this is the opinion page, of course, right? Where does this leave Democrats, voters to elites? Do you see me now? The hubris that cost Democrats the election. Okay. And then you have this photo of, Kamala and Biden just walking away or going to. So it's an interesting sort of cover. So then I want to show you the Fox News one, which really surprised me in a good way, because of course, being more democratic, the Fox News stuff makes me a little, okay. But I was like, I have to see what they're saying. And I like this. It says, Biden tells America, you can't love your country only when you win, in the wake of Vice President Harris's defeat. So, I thought that was an interesting thing. It usually would be like, there are other types of headlines on the Fox News site today, but I thought this one was pretty fair. And in fact, even here, Biden, the people vote and choose their leaders. I think it's interesting because, of course, they're highlighting the fact that Trump is they're definitely friendlier to Trump, but there's kind of a respect. They're saying, okay, Biden is recognizing this thing. And so I appreciated that because that was not the case during the last one. So I thought, they didn't make any comparisons. There aren't any nasty things. It seemed like it was pretty. And in fact, even this is a video and it rolls and it seems to be pretty good. I have to say too, that Fox News is in the world, we know it's right leaning. We know that but as a television channel, Fox is not necessarily left or right. In fact, my mother, who's definitely, I told you, my mom's a Democrat, but she watches Fox all the time because the regular local news is not, doesn't skew to the right or the left. It's more balanced. Okay. So, but Fox News in general, like, there are certain shows that are like that, but in general, your local news is going to be your local news. Okay. So even, my mom, she doesn't, she watches it because she likes the journalist. But she's still a Democrat. So just to be clear about that too, they're not necessarily always that way. So I want to show you this. You probably have this in front of you. Hello. Okay, so I thought this was fun. This was in the New York Times did something that I thought was amazing. They created a website about the elections for kids. Okay, so it was really for middle school, like scuola media and high school. And this was one of they put a game on there, and I made you a copy so you would have it. And it was called Election Night Bingo, which for you is just tombola, right? And what they said was because on Tuesday night or on election night, you have the voting all day, and then on TV it's constant coverage, right? You can imagine. And then the polls in the different states close at different hours because of the time changes, okay? Because you think the difference in time between, like in the Midwest in Wisconsin, they might close at 8 o'clock, but you've got the Easterners an hour before us, and then you've got out West is 3 hours behind us. So we've got a lot of time zones to cover. And so they say, okay, well, if the TV's on, because of course it's on, everybody's watching it, you can play this. And when you hear one of these words, you can put an X on it. And if you get one, here's your free space. But if you get this one or one of these within 30 minutes, then you won. So I thought it was fun, but I thought we, could talk about it too. We know that on the other side, you've got some definitions, right? Do you want to, how about if I give you the definition and you tell me the term? Want to try it? So let's see if you can get bingo. This is the name for not the presidential race, but any race that's being voted on that's not the first thing on the ballot, but further down on the ballot. What do you call that? So it's not maybe president, but it could be senator or it could be something else. What do you call that? All right, that's the definition, but see if you can see it here. Down ballot, right? Because on a presidential ballot, it's long, it goes that way. The first thing that it will ask you is, do you just want to do a straight ticket? Do you want to vote for all Democrat or all Republican? Or by you decide each candidate. And then it will have the different races. The first one, of course, is for president, and then they'll have, whatever else is being voted for at that time. So if something is down ballot, it just means that it's not the first thing on your ballot. What is 270? Oh, I went the wrong way.
The number of the great electors necessary to become president.
Right. Okay. So we don't call them great electors. We just call them electors. Okay. Yeah. You call them a grandi elettori. I think we just say electors because it's an electoral vote. Yes. Question. Oh, do you have a question or do you? No. Oh. Okay. Next one. All right. This is the term for the percentage of people who actually vote. What do we call that? Voter. It's the number of people who vote in an election, right? I have an electorate that is, I have a possibility of having this many voters, but how many turnout? Voter turnout means what's the percentage? 70% of people turned out to vote. Okay, so voter turnout means the percentage of people who voted. Yeah, well, how was the turnout? I don't know. We should look. We can look it up. Yeah, let's see. How much was voter turnout? Let's see if it says. It's near the 2020 record, but it doesn't really say yet, does it? Maybe it's too early because we haven't finished yet. Okay. What? Okay. Here's our picture again. All right. This is the term for when a state that normally votes Republican votes Democrat, or if a state normally votes Democrat, votes Republican. Huh? Nope. Flip, to flip. Okay. So if I normally go Democrat, but then that time I go to, I go Republican, that is flipping. We flipped the House. We flipped the Senate. Okay. Good. What do you call a state that always votes Republican? A red state. What do you call a state that always votes Democratic? A blue state. Okay, good. What is let's see, absentee or mail-in voting? What is that? Yeah, I know. Actually, I made a mistake again. What is absentee voting? Do you know? Here.
Oh,
Yeah, I gave it to you here. Wait, absentee voting.
Absentee voting.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
I
you are not
did.
living in America.
Exactly. So an absentee voter is me.
Is the mail vote.
Yeah, it's when you vote by mail normally. Yeah. And it's not email, by the way. Some states maybe, but my state does not do it electronically. My state sent me a PDF. Okay, that was electronic. They sent me a PDF of the ballot. I had to print the ballot. I had to use a pencil, not a pen, a pencil to, I don't know why. Huh? No, actually, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I can use a pen. No, in the past, it was a pencil. Now it's a pen. You can use whatever you want. And then you put it in an envelope, and then you put it in a bigger envelope with another document that another American has to say, yes, this is Caroline. Okay. And you send it in the mail. And I voted in September. Because the deadline, I think, for Wisconsin was the end of September or something, because each state is different. Okay, that's the interesting thing when we talk about the Electoral College, when we talk about the voting system in America. The voting system in America is not one, it's 50. There are 50 different systems. Okay, and and it was done with a purpose. The intention was to make sure that each state had a voice and that not one big state would get all of the power, right? So it was meant, I think there were probably good intentions, but there are also some problems with this as well, right? So all the states have different ways. We have different deadlines, different processes. Like I have to register to vote every time. I have to tell them who I am again. I have to write to, and I vote even though I live in Italy, I'm not considered, just an overbroad, I am considered a Wisconsin voter. Okay. So that's interesting. There's not like an extra over, so wherever you are in the world, you can vote in your home state and you are a voter in that area.
I think that in all the world, all the states of the nation of the world use your system for the foreigner, for the expat. Only in Italy we have a strange system.
Could be where you have to be present.
It is only Italy. All the world votes like you for the expat. Not
I
you.
hope the other systems are more modern than mine. I feel like mine is very outdated, but it still happens where my physical ballot goes to Wisconsin, it gets counted there. Okay, but I voted absentee because I live in Italy. My mother voted absentee because she didn't want to wait in line. Kamala voted absentee also because anybody in the past, you had to have a good reason. Now everybody votes absentee because of COVID. Made it much easier. Yeah. Before it wasn't necessarily, people could do it, but now it's much easier. And it's actually many, many people this year really did vote ahead because you could, it was easier, etc. Okay. So that's called early voting. but you're normally, the different states are different about when they start counting them. It's usually the day of the, like, it would have been Tuesday this time, but different states have rules about the deadline for receiving. Some of them, in fact, I think Nevada, the ones that are not yet finished, are not yet completely counted, are because they have a deadline for receiving the, you can send it up, and, it has to be postmarked the day of the election. By the way, we normally finish at 7. Today we're going to 7:30, if you're okay with it, because we have 30 minutes to make up. So if you're happy to stay, I'm happy to stay with you until 7:30 if it's not, but if you need to go, I understand. Okay. You wanted to say something.
Yes, I had the impression that this time the voting machine worked better than 4 years ago. Because 4 years ago,
Because
COVID,
because you're a Trumper, and Trump is like, no,
no.
he didn't work, and they lost a huge
It's possible. No, it's possible. It's possible. No, but it was everything it was everything new 4 years ago with the COVID. All the people voted by mail. There were a long queue. All the system was new. Organized in a few weeks. After 4 years, maybe worked a little bit better. No.
Yeah, I think there's also been a lot of investment in voting technology. It started in 2012, actually.
Yeah,
but
COVID, no?
Because, well, first it was 2000 after the thing with George Bush. There have been different moments. In fact, I put a link in your lesson. It's called Voting History, and it talks about the different times where people's ideas about voting changed, when you wanted everybody to vote, when you wanted less people to vote, when the Carnegie Foundation, for example, the family, the Carnegie, that name, Carnegie Hall, Carnegie. Well, they created a very large fund to actually invest in making sure that the states have updated voting machines. So this has been an ongoing thing, and especially because of the last election, there are so many people contesting things. I'm sure that you're right, that they had to come up with a system because they wanted to prevent any questions coming up.
In a moment, you had millions of mail ballots in a moment, in a week, 4 years ago, no? It was not predictable, no?
Yeah, who knows?
Now...
Because of, everything, the pandemic changed everything, didn't it? Yeah. And I think for a lot of things, it did a lot of terrible things, but it also did a lot of kind of modernized things a bit. We found, even here, where you could finally work from home for certain things. You didn't always have to be present. You could, okay. Yeah. But you can use this one. I've got this one here.
Yeah, basically after COVID, there was a disaster in the Italian police headquarters for the passport. Not, yeah, in the past you could do during the morning, any day, anytime you want, and now you have to book, you have to make a reservation even 5 or 6 months earlier. So, yeah.
It's true. That was one thing that didn't go well. Also in America, we had the same problem with passports. Okay. Other things here, we see that there are some swing states. You see Michigan, Nevada, Wisconsin. We talked before about the margin of error, which when we were talking about the polls before, the polls are just a sondaggi, right? Poll is an interesting word because poll can mean a sondaggio, right? When people are calling people, trying to understand who they're going to vote for. But it also can be where you vote. A polling station is where you vote. A polling booth, is what keeps other people from looking at who you're voting for example. So it's an interesting word. Question? Or you wanted to say something? No? Okay. All right. So I thought this was kind of fun because it's a way of getting also, teenagers, getting them involved in elections. In fact, in America, it's very normal for teenagers to be politically active, even if they're not voting. In fact, I I remember being a teenager, and when I was 16, I was already politically active. I was working at call centers, calling people, telling them to go vote, because I think we were worried about the environment then. We were, and it's still happening today. So I think it's an interesting thing to get kids involved in what's happening. I'm just gonna move down here. Now you have this thing here, right? The vocabulary match. This is a little game that I put together here for you. I didn't. I totally stole it from someone else, from my colleague. But I thought we could look at it. Let's look at it by the answers and see if you know what the words are. Okay, so let's start with the first one, which is A, which is a state where voters are divided between political parties, making it possible for either party to win. What do you think that is? That's a swing state. Well done. Okay. Swing state is number 14. Actually, I'll do it with you here. So number 14 is going to be A. Okay. B, a piece of paper or electronic form where voters make their choices. It's number 1. Yeah, it's just your ballot. Good. So B is going to be number 1. What about the total number of people who participate in an election? It's going to be 20, right? It's going to be the turnout, right? C. Okay, what about D? A group of people selected in each state to formally elect the president and vice president. Yeah, it's a group of people. That's why it's not a candidate. And each state to formally elect. Okay, so that's what number is that? Number 4. And when do they do that? On what date? So we know that the election just took place, but when do the electors actually do their vote, and when does it get certified? January 6th. Okay. All right. A group of people selected in each. Oh, we already did D. Sorry. What about E? A private space where a voter can mark their ballot in secret. A polling booth is number 18. Okay, what about F? An organized group of people with similar beliefs working to influence government policies. And no, lobby does not exist in this list, so you have to find another one. I'll give you a hint. Lanfranco and I, obviously, we do not have similar, right? We don't have similar ideas. So we're definitely not in this group together. Right, political party. Okay. So when people read that, they sometimes think, oh, this sounds like a lobby or a lobbyist. And it's true. That would be like, that probably came to your mind. So F is your political party. Okay. G is a preliminary election where party members vote for a candidate to represent their party. It's 7. It's the primary. All right. Because even Trump had to be chosen by his party. He couldn't just show up, right? He had to be chosen. Okay. H is the act of making a choice in an election. No. 10, just vote. You vote in a general election also, of course. I is the length of time an elected official serves in office. It's a term. What number is that? It's 9. How long is a presidential term? 4 years. What's the maximum you can serve as a president? 8 years, 2 terms. Okay. Let's see, a ballot submitted by mail before election day for those who cannot vote in person. Number 12, absentee ballot. Well done. A survey of public opinion, often used to predict which candidate might win. 6 is a poll, and be careful, we say poll, even though it looks like Paul, but we say poll. All right, let's see. L, a person who is eligible to vote. Do you like the word eligible? A voter, yes. Okay, did you know that, how old do you have to be to vote in the United States? You have to be 18. Do you know when that changed? It used to be 21. It changed because of the Vietnam War. Activists and students were saying, hey, how come you can send me to war at 18, but I can't vote for our leaders until 21? And there was a strong student movement, or young people movement, I should say, to lower the voting age. And that's when it became the age of 18, excuse me. In the 1970s, actually, because of the Vietnam War, yeah. So I mean, it probably started in the 60s, but let's say in the 70s. The final election where voters make the choice between candidates for office. General election. Well done. N, a person who is running for a political office is a candidate. Number 2. O is a state where most voters tend to vote either Republican or Democratic, so red or blue. Yes. What number is that? 19. P is a person chosen to run for vice president alongside a presidential candidate. No, a running mate. Yeah, so who is the running mate of Donald Trump? J.D. Vance. Yes, the president, the person who will be your vice president is your running mate because you're running together. Your friend who runs together. Huh? Another great guy. Yeah. A millennial, though. That's interesting. A young guy with. And I thought the wife seems interesting. He wrote the Hillbilly Elegy, which became a film. Okay. All right. P is a person chosen to run. Oh, no, we saw that already. Q, an organized effort to persuade people to vote for a candidate. It's a campaign, which is number 3. R, the collection of all people who are eligible to vote. It's the electorate. Okay, so you have the turnout is how many of your electorate actually vote. Okay. S is a set of goals and policies a party or candidate supports during a campaign. That's a platform. 16. And then T, a vote in which all the people in a country or an area are asked to give their opinion about or decide an important political or social question. It's a referendum. What number is that? That's, well, you could vote on a proposition and that's a referendum too. Yeah. There are 2 referendums this time, right? Use the microphones in front of you.
Florida, Trump won big, no? But there are 2 referenda, 2 propositions about abortion, no? Or 1 or 2, no? And I think because after the rule of the Supreme Court, the government of Florida the parliament of Florida made a very strict law about abortion. But it's slow. now they have to choose about two referenda. They can directly choose the right law about abortion. No, Trump won, but I don't know. Probably, in my opinion, they will have a more modern law about abortion in
Yeah,
Florida.
I think, but we'll have to check.
But
I think Florida actually went for the, did not support the more conservative abortion law. In fact, it happened. There were 7 or 8 states that had, had a referendum about abortion. It was interesting because the conservative states, the red states, mostly went Democrat, let's say, went towards pro-choice on that one. Whereas there was another, like even Missouri, which is a very Republican state, actually went towards abortion rights. Okay. And whereas there was another state that was actually a Democratic state that went more conservative. So it's true, it can happen because it's also like there's no person who is actually 100% Democratic or 100% Republican.
This is the right way to do laws.
Sure, ask directly,
sorry,
right?
Trump was right, or not Trump. The Supreme Court was right about it.
Right, and what? No, no, they weren't. But okay, they were absolutely not right. In my opinion, I respect your opinion. I don't agree, but that's why we talk, right? But it's interesting because Trump, who was always pro-choice, now he's pro-life, but his wife has come out as being pro-choice. So either way with them, they could please everybody. But it's true that the majority of voters in America are pro-choice, and that comes out in the voting. It didn't punish Trump very much, except maybe in the last election. But other than that, we can actually, well, I'm not going to look at that now. I wanted to just take a look. This is also in your lesson, if it's interesting to you. This is the kind of overview of the timeline of what happens before the elections and then during the primaries, the caucuses, national conventions, general election, electoral college. It kind of goes through everything. But I thought I would show you this 3-minute video, which shows what happens now. Okay, because there's a long time. He will become president in January. So he's got about 75 days to prepare. And this little video tells us what happens. Would you like to see the video? I put I think it has subtitles automatically on it anyway. Okay. I got to find it now because I opened all these other. We're so used to Googling everything now. There's your shoe. Where did I put it? Here it is. Okay. So I thought I would just share this with you quickly, and then we can talk about it. Oh, you're turning. Oh, thank you for turning on the sound. Should we try it?
Free world is
perfect.
One of the most challenging. Being the leader of the free world is one of the most challenging jobs on earth. So how on earth do presidents prepare? It's an enormous task to get ready to serve as President of the United States. For a president to walk through the White House doors and start presiding over national affairs takes months of planning and groundwork in advance. Yet a newly elected president has only about 75 days from election day until inauguration day arrives. And that very afternoon, that leader starts running the largest and most complex organization in the world, the US government. If the sitting president wins another term, the upheaval isn't as dramatic, but the commander-in-chief is still inundated with work, handling personnel changes, crafting second-term agendas, and possibly changing course based on first-term results and lessons learned. 75 days is not enough time to prepare for this level of responsibility. There's too much at stake. That's why candidates must get ready to govern even as they campaign, giving them the best odds of hitting the ground running when their term begins. To paint a picture of how enormous the job is, presidents oversee a budget of about $6 trillion, and they manage an organization that employs more than 2 million civilians and another 2 million military and reserve forces. A new president also must appoint more than 4,000 people. Even a second-term president typically has a lot of hiring to do. The past 3 presidents who were re-elected to office saw scores of trusted first-term advisors headed for the exits during the first 6 months of the new term, leaving vacancies that needed to be filled. The intricacies involved in running the country make it plain that it's vital for presidential candidates to start transition planning early, no later than spring of an election year, to be ready to govern on day one. An essential first step is putting together a transition team that can organize the fundamentals involved in running the country, planning policy, creating a management agenda, and vetting people for top administration jobs. Fortunately, assistance is available. Once the Republican and Democratic political conventions are over, major candidates from both parties have access to federal funding, office space, and administrative support. The Partnership Center for Presidential Transition also can help transition teams, incumbent presidents, and federal agency leaders prepare. Candidates and transition teams are not the only ones with work to do. The White House and federal agency officials also have a responsibility to help the nation move efficiently through this challenging shift of power at the top. For example, they must have succession plans by September 15th in anticipation of hundreds of officials leaving. Inauguration Day marks the beginning of a new term, but not the end of the transition. Presidents continue to staff up and set their agenda well into the first 100 days. All these transition activities help the nation achieve a smooth and peaceful transfer of power, long a hallmark of American democracy. To learn more, visit presidentialtransition.org.
It gives you a little bit of an idea. Would you like to be a president? Sounds like fun, right? They talked about hiring 4,000 people or 2 million, was it 2 million people who are civilians and 2 million in the military? Okay. Now of those, if I remember correctly, I was just reading an article about this before because I was curious. You know, it's not like you can just hire people like that. You can hire many people, but there are, I think, 1,200 positions that must be approved by the government. So by the House and the Senate. So that also takes time. It normally goes easier for a president in their first term, in their first 2 years, because normally there's a wave, right? Like this time, Trump kind of won everything. So he doesn't have to fight about most of these things. The people that he wants to appoint will probably be approved without a problem. Well, we don't know. It'll be easier than if it was a Democratic majority. There, of course. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it's definitely easier if the people who are making the decision agree with you. Okay. And then if, usually in the second 2 years of your term, things flip, right? Because there's we only elect half of the government at the time of the president, right? Then the other two years. So it's every 4 years, but they kind of do it. So 2 and 2. Okay. So you're always voting for something. So usually the first 2 years of a president's term you can get a lot done because usually the people agree with you. Usually after 2 years, people are angry again, then it changes. Okay. Because what happens is we've seen this a million times here. You probably felt it. You feel like one of the reasons that Trump won was because people feel poor because there's so much inflation, right? Prices went up big time. If you remember just a few years ago, definitely pre-pandemic, you go to America and you could spend money like crazy. We were all rich. Now it's not like that. It's very expensive in America now. Even if the economy is actually going pretty well, but that doesn't mean that you feel rich. There's definitely a difference between what you see on paper and what you feel at home, right? And so this is true for Republicans and Democrats, right? So normally when we have our president and then it's time to vote again, we're going to be thinking about what have they done for us in the last 2 years? And that's normally when the changes happen. It's very cyclical, I think, just like we see things flipping. People flip because we want to have answers to our problems. We want things to get better. We don't want them to get worse. If we feel like we're worse, we're going to look for a candidate who's going to help us out in those ways. And I think we're all the same in that, right? If we're unhappy about wars in the world, we're going to look for a candidate who has similar ideas to what we have. Okay. In the past, I think it's interesting that in the past, the differences between Democrats and Republicans were usually just economic. Okay, because there was a difference in the idea of how money should be spent, where it should be spent. That's now changed. Now the difference between Republicans and Democrats is a lot about social issues. So we've even changed like what's important to us. So, there are all these sort of things. It's constantly evolving, right? What's important to us, what we think is going to make a better candidate, et cetera. So, and it's never easy to predict. There are many people who thought, oh, Kamala's our answer. She's the one. But the other people like, no, Kamala would never be our answer. It's got to be him, right? So, and who's right? We don't know. There's nobody right because there's nobody who's perfect for the job. Nobody. You saw here, even in the first 100 days, they're still trying to figure stuff out. And I think probably in the full 4 years, I think maybe the second term you start to get a little bit more relaxed. But I can't imagine that in the first 4 years you ever feel like, yeah, I'm really doing a great job. I don't think it works that way, right? So, I have a lot of compassion for people who have the courage even to go to these higher levels. I just want to show you, see what else I had here. Just want to show you what else, other links that I put in here. There was an article in the Post yesterday that I thought was interesting that talks about what it would mean, the Trump win, for the world's problems. Again, this is the opinion of the writers who were there, but this was just kind of I just put the main points, but then I put the entire article here so you could actually read what their opinion is about it. Okay. And then I also put some other things. I put one from The Guardian just to have a European point of view. I also put something about Trump media's stock price. It went very, very far up, then it went down. Now it's kind of evening out. So I was sort of interested in what's happening to him personally, because of this. Okay. He was a few, he's like billions richer the day that he won, but then it kind of evened out, right? People sold off, people kept. And then this is an article that I found really interesting. It's about the Electoral College and why it survived. Why don't we use the popular vote? And it has the arguments on both sides. Of course, there are people who think that the Electoral College should stay. It should absolutely stay for the reasons that that the framers had in mind, which was to make sure that each state has a voice, that no one state becomes too important. There are other people who say, okay, that might have worked then, but now we have a few states who make a difference and the others maybe not. So there are people who say, oh, it's racist because it was started, to make sure that white people had more of a voice than people of color. So there are all the arguments that you can take a look there. This is where I got the bingo, the bingo night article and how you play. And then there's a nice article about swing states. How did they get so important? What happened? And of course, it's linked to the Electoral College, but there's a nice history there. And then here, there's an article about just the history of voting rights. It's, when Lamfrago just said something about, oh, it seems like it just went really smoothly this time, the counting. And it actually talks about when people started investing. It just has like an interesting, if you're interested in this stuff, not everybody's interested, but it talks about how people started voting. When did women start voting? When could people of color start voting? When people started voting at the beginning, for example, when there was still slavery in the United States, in the southern states, they wanted to count slaves as people, but not as a whole person. They counted them as like 3/5 of a person, with no voting rights, right? Because they wanted to make sure that they got right.
One vote for each slave.
Right. Right, exactly. So the idea was that, but then after emancipation, immediately after there was, blacks could vote, but then there were, in the southern states more rules about who could vote, who couldn't vote, et cetera. And it's just how it goes through time also, like when it was easier to vote, when it got more difficult to vote. And then I told you about Jill Stein, who stole all those votes from Kamala. Maybe she didn't, maybe I'm just teasing. Maybe you've got a microphone in front of you.
Is Jill Stein the candidate of the Greens?
What? Yeah.
Yes. I read something yesterday or the day before, because a delegation of European Greens went to Jill Stein to say, please endorse Kamala or withdraw. Don't remain on the ballot. Okay. She answered, I don't do it because you are warmonger. I am not.
Interesting.
finished.
Yeah. And in fact, Americans often don't like having a third party candidate because when we had a really good third party candidate, who was Ralph Nader, I think was running against Bill Clinton. I think that time Bill Clinton won, or no, it wasn't Bill Clinton. It was Ralph Nader and no, Ross Perot was the Republican one. There was another one. I can't remember if it was, might have been the same one. But anyway, there was a feeling that, or maybe it was maybe it is the same one as Ross Perot, but just the idea that that third party person just takes away the steam out of, it's really difficult to get enough power behind an independent, a third party person. So it's just taking away votes from one of the other two. And then finally, the Robert F. Kennedy, his presidential campaign. But I think you should Google him too and see what you think about the stories that Lanfranco tells, or some of the other crazy stories about him as well. Yes, Silvio.
I just Google about Kamala, and I saw that she's still the vice president of the U.S.
Absolutely. She remains until January.
Okay, yeah.
Right, because Biden is still president until January. That's what the inauguration happens. The results the electors have to still submit their votes, but we're waiting for all the returns to come in. And then those get certified on January 6th. After that date, then we have the transition, or the transition is already happening. So now Kamala will be explaining to JD Vance, giving information to him, and Biden will be sharing information with President Trump if he chooses to take it, because he so far isn't. They just started to do. There are all these deadlines. You saw that there are these committees. You have to do all this paperwork, and to get the information that you need. But Trump may not want that. Last time he didn't really participate that much in the transition process. He just sort of did stuff later. So we don't know what's going to happen. But anyway, that's normally what happens. The president leaves a letter for the president after, explaining certain things, what their ideas were, what was going on. And then we go to our new president. And
Interesting.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions? You're probably just tired of hearing about it. Now let's never talk about it again. In fact, in the Italian American Association in Trieste, we had our party we have an election party. We vote just like and Kamala won there too. Then when the next day we cried, we took down, no, we didn't cry. We're used to it now, but we took down all of our decorations. Now we said, okay, let's just think about Thanksgiving, and then let's think about Christmas, and we'll worry about the country another time. So thank you for coming. Thank you for anybody who watches from home, and I'll see you soon.